Hey, this is Zac Maloy from the Nixons, and you're listening to the Nothing's Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Zac Maloy of the Nixons.
Yep, the Nixons have a new album in the works, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're recording new, or is it finished, did he say? Or it's about done, right?
I think so. And over 2020 and 21, they've been releasing some singles, and they had a new EP out, which actually I bought right after the interview. I went on their website and bought the Sonic Boom EP.
Yep. And if you're not familiar with the Nixons, Zac Maloy is also a producer, songwriter for some of the likes of Carrie Underwood, Three Doors Down, Tim McGraw, Blake Shelton. We can go on and on and on.
Shinedown.
Yeah, Shinedown, yep. And he wrote the number one song, Atlas Falls, for Shinedown, or with Shinedown, I should say. So, yeah, what a great interview he was. We were just glad to have him on.
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable guy.
Yeah, I was a big fan back in the 90s. Went and saw him live here in Davenport.
I knew you were excited to get this interview in. I know that this was right up your alley. So, yeah, it was exciting to have you be so excited about it.
All right.
Yeah, let's get to this interview.
Good night.
Good night. Zac, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce to you my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Zac, this is going to be fun to talk to you tonight.
Hey, guys. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for all the correspondence and scheduling us out so far away. I think I scheduled this with you like back in May or something like that. I think it was my birthday, actually, when we scheduled it, so go figure.
Yeah, awesome, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. So, hey, COVID-19 has caused the music business to be halted for over a year now, or we're looking at a year and a half now. How have you stayed creative during these COVID times?
Well, this is the weirdest thing ever, but during COVID, I actually signed a publishing deal. For people that don't know, I'm I'm a songwriter. This is my day job. The Nixons are obviously a big part of my life, and we've reunited. We shut down, but I did sign a new publishing deal, weirdly. Just the way it worked out, life. It was a company that we had been talking to, and signed a deal with them, and lo and behold, COVID also made Shinedown want to release a song I had written with them a while back called Atlas Falls. And because it's Shinedown, it went to number one.
Yeah.
So weirdly, my wife is like, Zach, you're the only person that won during COVID. So I somehow made it through okay.
Oh, fantastic.
And everyone that's listening is saying, God, what an asshole. right about now.
Yeah.
You'll be performing at Batfest in Austin, Texas this Saturday, August 28th. Can you talk a little bit more about Batfest and who's going to be performing and who you're going to be working with down there?
Yeah, man. First of all, we're super excited to be playing that show. It's also a little bittersweet because it was our first show back with our friends, the Toadies. And unfortunately, the Toadies announced last week that they were not going to perform at Batfest, and they then recently announced that they're canceling their tour. So that's sort of the weird state that we're in, right? I know you guys see it too, but it's like, one big group announces a big tour, and then Korn announced a few days ago that a band member has COVID, and then
right.
Garth Brooks just canceled his tour, and so and then again I see pictures of Our Lady Peace and Shinedown on stages, and it's packed arenas. Then you wonder, well, is that going to be the problem? I'm just going to be positive and say that Batfest is going to be awesome, and then that we're playing some other shows on down the line. We're playing a really big show September 10th at Trees down in Dallas, which is kind of a home base for us. And then I should also mention that I'm part of another group called Monster Joe. This is a weird thing that I hatched about a year and a half ago with Vinny from Sponge and Todd Pipes from Deep Blue Something. And it's sort of just kind of going to be a fun little side project for me. We will each sing songs by our bands, and then I'll give it hell on my best Wood by Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam, and
awesome.
And then Vinny will do Interstate Love Song, and then Todd will do Oasis. Todd will do all the songs that sound prettier. Vinny and I can't pull that side off.
Yeah.
Nice. Jeff, take this next one.
Oh, man, I'm excited about that. That's cool. Yeah, so you just had you've been pretty busy, like you mentioned. You just had a new release, a new EP, solo EP. Can you tell us a little bit about that recording process? Yeah,
so I've released a couple little EPs during this shutdown, just to get stuff out there. And what it is basically, and this last one is an even more finer point of what we sort of call songwriter vanity projects a little bit. A lot of songwriters do it. Basically, I write songs every day, right? Well, they don't all get cut, unfortunately.
Right.
And so in this particular case, Selling Light, which is the EP that's out right now, it was 5 songs that I had written with a buddy of mine here in town named David Hodges. Incidentally, David and I co-wrote Atlas Falls with Shinedown. And David and I had written these songs that, we just loved, our publishers loved, but they just, for whatever reason, they hadn't gotten cut. Actually, I take that back. One of them had been cut by Tim McGraw. But I did my version of it, and then sang these other songs that had never been, cut by another artist. I tacked on one last song called Selling Light that I wrote by myself just here in my studio where I'm sitting now, and that's it, man. My friend Scott Whitehead helped me pull together the artwork. My buddy Kelly Kerr, who's a fabulous photographer, he did the photo art, which I love. And I'm really proud of it. I just actually pressed up a handful on CDs, actual physical CDs. So it's been kind of a cool little labor of love that I'm actually going to go out and play some shows. I've got a show in October back in Oklahoma City, my first solo Zac Maloy solo show in Oklahoma. I did another solo show in Deep Ellum about 3 or 4 weeks ago at a really great little place called Will Call. And again, I just can't tell you what it feels like to just be able to be singing in front of people. let's knock on wood that things, keep moving in a positive direction. And yeah, so yeah, a lot going on, man. It's exciting.
Oh, so cool.
Do you write specifically for your solo work versus for the Nixons, or do you just write whatever pours out and then sift through later to figure out where it fits?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's an interesting thing. I've talked about this with other people. I have a couple of specific collaborators here in Nashville, right, that my handful of buddies that we write a lot together. And, listen, when you're writing a song that Blake Shelton is cutting next week, we get little alerts, so-and-so's cutting their, the back half of their album. Yeah, you got to think about that stuff. You got to think about, being a little more tongue-in-cheek if it's Blake. Maybe if you're targeting Carrie Underwood, I was lucky enough to have a hit song with Carrie a few years ago, and obviously the subject matter is going to be different for a Nixon song than a Carrie Underwood song. However, I think that coming back to the Nixons after a 15-year break, where I was a focused, sort of professional songwriter, I think it definitely helped. I think on our EP, we released an EP last year called Sonic Boom.
Yeah.
And I feel like it I don't want to say helped, because I did also try not to overthink things. I mean, listen, we're a sweaty rock band that the lyrics don't always have to make sense, but in country music, for instance, they do, right? And so you think about that, but that's the same thing you do if you're thinking about, okay, today I'm writing with Black Veil Brides, who I've written with. Well, you think about writing with them different than you think about writing with even a rock band. It's different when I'm writing with the guys in Shinedown than it is with, Theory of the Day. It's different for everything.
Sure.
And the one thing I will say about when I went back to be a songwriter / member of a band, it was really cool because my guys would text me and say, hey, I don't think that lyric works. I think that's kind of, I think Ricky called me out 3 or 4 times. That's our bass player who doesn't hold his opinion back at all. And so, which is great, right? I mean, that was actually really fun to be like, oh yeah, I remember what it's like to be in a band. And co-writing is sort of a similar thing. I'm typically in the room with two or three other people. So, but it's a different thing too. Again, with Sonic Boom, I've actually always been, for the rock genre, a writer that makes a little more makes sense most of the time. Sister, our biggest song, is very obvious what it's about. I miss my sister. That's just straight as forward as it gets. But then I've got other wacky moments. I've got a song called Gabriel about a guy that kidnaps angels, which obviously doesn't come from any real place other than just a pretty warped mind. But yeah, man, it's just a different process, but it's also very fun. It's also very fun for me because there's a lot of songwriters that only write country music, right? They go in every day and their goal is, I got to get a Kenny Chesney cut. I've never been that guy. I go in and write with a rock band one day, Lizzie Hale and Joe from Hailstorm, and then the next day I'm writing with, Tom Douglas, who wrote The House That Built Me. So I'm lucky that way. I really do feel pretty lucky.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to kind of touch upon the EP versus the LP versus the 45. And, what's right now is in the popular culture is artists releasing singles at a time, and we're seeing some EPs, and every once in a while we'll see an LP come out. Your thought process in the modern era of music, do you think this is a good thing that we're losing that LP? People have the attention span that are so small now that they're not buying LPs, they're not consuming LPs. What is your thought on all that?
I have this conversation a lot because I actually have written, I'm thinking specifically of Scott Stapp. I wrote about 10 of the 11 songs on his last solo record, and we're currently writing for his next solo record.
Nice.
And it was really a fun exercise to go through with him and the other guys that wrote. The publishing company is called Four Horsemen, and it's with Marty Fredrickson, Scott Stevens, and Blair Daly and myself. And so we really were the core of songwriting and production for that Stapp record. And Scott thinks about it, right? Shinedown thinks about it. They think about the album. Black Veil Brides I've got a song coming on their next album. It's almost a damn near a concept album. You know, that's just the way Andy from that band thinks. With the Nixons, even, I'll say, you know, we didn't do an LP mainly because Ricky's in Utah, I'm in Nashville, the guys are in Oklahoma, and it would have taken us another year, you know, and so we're just like, no, let's get some music out there. But we really were pretty purposeful about the EP and having it make sense as a body of work. Now, having said all that, I do, the nature of my job is trying to get singles, right? I mean, someone asked me the other day, you know, said something like, hey, congrats on getting that cut on that album. And I really offhandedly and felt like a jackass after I said it. I was like, yeah, but it's not going to be a single. And the person even said, that's okay. I mean, you got a cut on an album. I mean, be happy, right? And he's right, you know, so I need to not think about it that way. I need to be proud of being part of someone's body of work, because the Nixons were very purposeful back in the day about, we wanted the album to be a musical journey.
Sure.
Now, the flip side to all that is my son, Zac Maloy, who people, please go check him out. I'm so proud of him. He just released his first single.
Oh, cool.
And we were talking to a guy at his little, you know, label distribution company, and they were just talking about how, okay, look, Jude, you need to release this single, and then you need to think about 6 or 8 weeks later having another song ready. And then about 6 or 8 weeks later having another song ready to release as a single. And I was asking the guy, I'm like, why do you do that? I mean, the Nixons, I mean, sister, you guys are from the old school as well. And so, I mean, in the 90s, Sister was not only our third single, which I'm not sure bands would get to a third single now, but that was our third single, and it took a long time to break, and it was on the charts for almost a year, you know, all told. Sure. I think it was on the charts for like 49 weeks. And so yeah, it's a totally different ball game. I mean, even down to, like I said, my son, you know, working with these people, and he's got the songs ready. I mean, he's got them ready. He's like, Dad, I've got it in my calendar, and then, you know, 8 weeks after my first single, I'm going to release my second one, and so on. And then they did say, and then at some point, if you want to release a full package to have something for your fans to you know, buy or have, or, you know, I made a joke at my acoustic show in Dallas. I was like, hey, I've got physical CDs after the show if you want to buy one. And a bunch of people bought them, and I think probably half of them made a comment that was like, yeah, I don't listen to CDs, but I just wanted you to sign it and me have something, you know, from the show. I mean,
yeah, totally get that. Jeff, you got the next one?
I was just going to ask, right before The Selling Light, you had an EP and a full-length Lead Singer Syndrome, Volume 1 and 2. I really enjoyed, I was listening to both those today and really enjoyed them. Can you talk a little bit about the songs from those two albums?
Yeah, so same thing. Those were some songs that I sort of just had, and I did a thing. I knew I wanted to do it before I even released Lead Singer Syndrome Volume 1, and that is, Lead Singer Volume 1 was very rock. I mean, it sounds like it could have been a Nixons EP. You know, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard and fast. I wrote a lot of those songs with Tommy Henriksen, who was actually in Alice Cooper's band, and then the Hollywood Vampires. Tommy's a friend of mine. He's actually in town this week, working with Alice. So Tommy and I did a lot of those, and it was scorching, just rock and roll. The second one, way not that, way more. You know, country or Americana. And I did that on purpose just because I just talked about it a second ago. I mean, I'm kind of proud of that I do it all. I mean, I'm, you know, not doing a whole lot of hip hop, but I, you know, almost every other genre, I'll dip my toe in.
Yeah, that's what I was telling Eric today. I really enjoyed that you have that. You have the rock, the soft rock, the country, and it blends all very well.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. You know, the Nixons reunited in 2017, in which toured with Sponge. Can you give us the journey of the reuniting of the band and how it all came about?
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things that we toured so much for a good decade. We formed in 1990, and we kind of broke up in 2000, 2001. And when I say broke up, I mean the final lineup broke up. There were pieces different members sort of went away over the years. I think of this final scene of Stand By Me when the people were walking down the railroad tracks disappearing. But
yeah.
So it was an interesting thing. There's a venue in Oklahoma City. We got asked to play the festivals over the years, starting 3-4 years after we sort of broke up. And my answer was always just a hard no. Like, it never even made it to the other members because I was done. I mean, I toured 300 days of the year. Mm-hmm. I have children now. They're old now. But when the Nixons broke up, my kids were babies.
Yeah.
I had just gotten some cuts with Bowling for Soup, and then I got a Daughtry cut. So it looked like, okay, this songwriting thing might work out. And so it was just time. This great friend of the band, Brent Brewer, who has a venue in Bricktown, Oklahoma City, he just kind of kept banging away. And finally, some phone calls were made. And I hadn't spoken to a couple of the members in 17 years. Well, Ricky Brooks and even longer. But we all just called and talked, and I was on the phone with, I think, each of the guys for an hour in the initial sort of, should we do it, should we not? Mm-hmm. And, then what happens is you put the word out, you go play a show. It was a sold-out crowd in a massive room, in downtown Oklahoma City. Another friend of ours that has a production company gave us a big wall of LED lights, like $50,000 worth of production for nothing, just because he wanted it to be a great show. After all that time, we have a lot of friends. Ricky's brother Andy up in Utah, he's a great visual artist, and so he had some great videos playing behind us that sort of were sort of like went with the songs, if you will, just visually. And I think it was just such an overwhelming night for us, doing the VIP thing where I'm talking to people who have flown up from Brazil and Toronto and San Francisco, and it was weird. I mean, it was the VIP was like you guys know what those are. You pay a little extra and you get a photo op and a signed poster, and I mean, it was overwhelming because it was a couple thousand capacity room, but I think we sold 200 VIPs.
Oh,
so.
Wow.
That tells you a lot, right? That tells you, okay, I mean, listen, maybe we're not going to be able to go on tour and play 2,000 seaters across the country, but in Oklahoma and Texas and the Midwest, we had a great fan base up Northeast. That's why the Sponge tour sort of went up to Providence and Long Island and all that. But I think that first show was sort of it. It was like, oh, okay, maybe a handful of people do still give a damn. And so we, and then it was funny, things just started happening. We got asked to play BuzzFest in Houston, and it's a massive all-day festival with, the funny thing about that was on the bill were also bands that I had written with, and they only knew me as Mr. Songwriter Guy. And so there's Scott Stapp standing side stage, getting ready, we played earlier, band called Goodbye June. They were just looking at me, shaking their heads like, "What are you doing, old man?" But it was also really cool. It was really fun to have those guys see me in that light. Then we played Edge Fest in a soccer stadium in Dallas, and then we got offered to open for Smashing Pumpkins, and then it was kind of solidified. Then it was kind of like, okay, the name's out there. We're going to get offers. Let's just do this. Let's just have it be a real thing. I should say, I should address the drummer in the room, and that is that. I'm going to sound like Spinal Tap here for a second, but no, our drummer is alive and well, and John Humphrey is our drummer, and he plays in the band Seether, as I know you guys know.
Yeah.
But John plays with Seether, so what that means to us is we could never play like we used to play because John, that's his priority. Now, the weird thing that happened for some dates a couple years ago is John calls me one day and he's like, "Hey man, I've got some bad news. That whatever it was, 2 or 3 gigs we had booked, I don't think we're going to be able to play them because Seether just got, Seether tour as it happens gets shuffled around, and now we've extended dates and I can't play with the Nixons." And then he threw out very feebly. He's like, I don't know if he thought I would not like this idea. But he's like, "My son Jackson, who we all know, we've known him since he was a baby, at the time was 19. I think he's 22 or 23 now, but he's a great drummer. He grew up on the Nixons, and I've talked to him, and if you guys are cool with it, he would be a fill-in. And it was kind of a perfect storm because John in Cedar can't play, as much as we'd like, but John's son happens to be a mini-me of John. He's just a
awesome.
badass drummer, and he came on board and played the shows and just killed it, man. He just killed it. And subsequently, here we are. We got Bat Fest Saturday, and it's not John, it's Jackson.
Oh,
and that's great. And by the way, it's really cool for him. I mean, he played one of those festivals. I think he played Buzz Fest with us, and we walked off stage after playing for 10,000 people, and he's like, Zach, I can't believe that. That was so cool. So I love it that he's getting a little bit of that experience and getting to sort of sit in his dad's drum seat, as it were. And he's a great kid. Kind of funny footnote. I told you my son Jude is an aspiring artist, and he when he heard that was happening, he kind of offhandedly. I still don't know if he was joking or not. He's a pretty confident kid. He said, Dad, if you're ever like sick or you can't play a show, I could fill in for you.
That's awesome.
Like, I don't know about that, man. Why don't you pump the brakes there?
Yeah.
Oh, so cool. Jeff, you got the next one?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say I was fortunate enough to see the Nixons live back in 1996. You guys came here to Davenport, Iowa, and played at the River Center. Can you talk a little bit about that probably not the first tour, but back then the tour that was coming off the 95 FOMA album, just the song, you guys were rising in popularity. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think I kind of cut out for a second, but I think what you were talking about is the just that first tour, that first ride, and what it's like to have a song starting to react. And did you say you saw us in Davenport? Was that an outdoor thing? Like a pig?
I remember being indoors, I think.
Indoor, okay.
Yeah.
We played some weird show. I'll never forget. It was in maybe not Davenport, but it's something like the Quad Cities, if I remember correctly. And and it was outdoor, and it was just about a half a mile from a pig processing center or whatever, and it was the most overwhelmingly awful smell ever. It's burned in my brain. But
it wasn't the Davenport show. But could have been Clinton or something.
Well, and we had some great times on that first tour. I mean, listen, you guys know it. I mean, at some point in every young man's life, you think, I want to be a rock star, And by the way, I don't consider myself to have been a rock star, but I was a successful rock singer, frontman in a band that got signed and sort of lived the dream. Was in a tour bus for the better part of a decade, and it was really cool for us. I alluded to it a second ago. We had a little bit more unique journey than some, because we didn't come out of the gates with first single blows up. We didn't. I mean, unfortunately, our first single never got added to MTV. It did okay alternative radio. Our second single, a song called Happy Song, it did a little better on the charts, but it was not a hit. It got played on 120 Minutes. I've texted back and forth with Matt Penfield, who was the first person on MTV to utter my band name, and he's still kicking it, and I'm a fan of his. And so, but one spin on 120 Minutes, like 4 or 5 times, that's not, for young listeners listening, 120 Minutes was a show on MTV every, I think, Sunday night that played the even more underground stuff that couldn't get played on regular rotation. It wasn't Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson's a bad example. That's more 80s, but you guys know. It wasn't in sync. It was stuff that maybe they wouldn't play during the week. But luckily, our third single was Sister, and it got put into regular rotation, such that my mom got MTV finally, when she would have never gotten MTV, and she would record it on a VCR and send me a VCR tape in the mail. It was just super cute. But no, man, I mean, the answer to your question is what was it like, that ride? It was just amazing. It was a rocket ride. It's what you want. You're flying to LA, you're shooting a music video, you're flying to New York, we opened for Kiss at Madison Square Garden, and we toured with Radiohead and Soul Asylum on that tour, and we did a bazillion festivals, and the festivals during the 90s, I mean, that was sort of you guys were there, it was, there are still festivals, and they're different now, right? Coachella's, but these were just amazing. Saturday in the middle of the summer, you're playing Point Fest in St. Louis, and the lineup in reverse order was the Ramones, Stone Temple Pilots, Matchbox 20, Jewel, the Nixons, Everclear. It was amazing. And, festivals with Bush and, No Doubt. And, we did a couple dates with Our Lady Peace in Canada, which was awesome. It opened up our sort of our audience in Canada, because Our Lady Peace was a massive Canadian band.
Yeah.
And so, it was an amazing ride. And one, by the way, I should say that, like, it's really cool to be in the spot I'm in now doing what I do, because, so I loved Our Lady Peace, and we got to play a few shows with them. And then fast forward to 10 years later, Rain, the singer for Our Lady Peace, and I are both writing for other artists. We both had cuts on a David Cook album. We both had cuts on some rock album. And he calls me out of the blue and says, I'm a fan of your writing. Would you want to write for an Our Lady Peace album? So he flew to Tulsa, where I was living at the time. We wrote a song called All You Did Was Save My Life, and it was a hit song in Canada.
Nice.
And I mean, I don't know if that happens without my history, right? Because he might have been a fan of my writing, but he probably, sort of got turned on to me because, Zac Maloy, he was in the Nixons, and now he's writing on this Carrie Underwood album that I'm trying to get a cut, or whatever it was. And just stuff like that happens all the time. I mean, I'm friends with Kevin Griffin from Better Than Ezra. We write a lot. And I first met him backstage at one of those festivals I was just referencing. So it's cool. It's great that I still get to, in some ways, relive those glory days.
Yeah.
Oh, so cool.
Awesome.
I kind of wanted to touch upon the aspect of discussing 120 minutes. And the premise of 120 minutes was supposed to be underground rock and roll, whatever. But my goodness, I found it to be, the 120 minutes was kind of frustrating when they'd say Graham Parker is underground rock and roll, Ziggy Marley is underground rock and roll, the Nixons are underground rock and roll. You guys were not underground. You're a rock and roll band. Graham Parker was a very classic singer-songwriter type of performer. Ziggy Marley was just a reggae musician. And I just kind of did not understand the whole purpose of 120 minutes when they said that these type of artists were underground, when they were very much not. Do you think they were just kind of scraping to try to create somebody as an underground artist?
I mean, I got to tell you, that's a great point, and I have never really thought about it. But as you were talking, I mean, that's the first answer that comes to me is only because I know Matt a little bit. It probably should have just been called the Matt Pinfield Show. I mean, really, because I think he was just playing shit he liked. I really do. I don't think, and you're right, it was described as, tune in Sunday night at 10 o'clock for 120 minutes where we explore the underground of music, or I think it even said underground of rock and roll, or maybe it didn't, but certainly the underground. And you're right, dude. I mean, listen, our biggest hit was a power ballad, for God's sake, with Sister. I mean, so we were the furthest thing. And Happy Song, by the way, was it was probably the bounciest. It's interesting because if you guys might not know the album well, but if listeners go listen to our first album, Foma, if you listen to a song called Blind, that song should have been on 120 minutes, but Happy Song shouldn't have, and Sister shouldn't have. Sister wasn't, by the way. It went into the main rotation right away. But you make a good point, and I think it's really a funny thing. It's a funny thing about the 90s because we did have NSYNC. The Nixons actually played a show with NSYNC, as weird as that sounds. But that was kind of what was also maybe cool about the 90s was that there were all these sort of clashing, you would, like I just said, the lineup I just said for that festival was, I'll never forget it. It was Point Fest, and it was another festival in Kansas City the next weekend, and it was Jewel and the Ramones on the same show. I mean, that's bizarre, but also I kind of love it, and so So yeah, it was, you know, and by the way, I don't think I'm out of line by saying I'm really lucky to have had that decade be my sort of training ground, because it really was true training. You know, we didn't get signed, you know, from a demo tape. We had to tour for 4 years. You know what I mean? So we honed that skill. And then we didn't have a single right out of the gates. We had to work for a year. And then you have to learn how to work, you know, audiences, program directors at radio stations, you know, learn how to perform at a record store on a shitty PA with an acoustic guitar, you know. So it was an interesting time to sort of do your thing, because the 90s, different than now. I mean, I get frustrated. I work with bands now, and I'll write with them, and I'll say, so when are you guys hitting the road? And they're like, you know, this is pre-COVID, when things were normal. And I would be so frustrated. They would say, oh, no, we're not going to hit the road until we have a single out. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Just get out there and play some shows and you know, get good at what you do. And so anyway, yeah, it's a long answer for what that ride was like, and what 120 minutes was doing right or wrong. But yeah, it was an amazing time. It really was.
I'm just glad you guys are back together. I really enjoy that new Sonic Boom EP. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it wouldn't behoove us if we didn't kind of discuss the Nixons' time with MCA Records. And
you kind of cut out a little bit there. Go again.
Yeah, it wouldn't behoove us if we didn't discuss the Nixons' time with MCA Records. Can you talk a little bit more about the signing with MCA? I know when you think of MCA Records, you think of the Leonard Skinner song, "Working for MCA." But can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
I have a funny story for you about that specifically, but I'll back up and just say Ron Oberman and Beth Halper were the two A&R people that flew out to Oklahoma City to watch us play. The Nixons had worked ourselves up to selling out, you know, decent-sized places, Trees, where we're playing in a few weeks. We were selling it out in Dallas. We were selling out Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Kansas City, Fayetteville, Arkansas, and so we were getting radio airplay, and every label came to see us. Every label flew us out to the West Coast, kind of schmoozed us a little bit. And I always joke that MCA Records was owned by Universal, and when they gave us fast passes for Universal Park to go ride all the rides, that's where they won us over. But no, it wasn't that. It was the people there. They just felt right. All the other labels that we had talked to, Epic and Columbia and some others, were great too, and I still work with some of the people I met back in those days. But MCA Records were just a great bunch of people. Tell one story that we went to meet with Al Teller. Al Teller is this legendary label executive, and we walk into his office, and it's kind of dimly lit, and we all sit in these kind of plush couches, and he looks across the desk at me, and he says, "Listen, we want you guys, and we're prepared to just make you an offer that you won't be able to say no to." And I looked at him and I said, "Do you realize you just quoted The Godfather? Because that was scary as shit." But it was also kind of awesome, because we were signed by this guy that was a carryover. Do you know what I mean, from the old days? Yeah. And so it was super cool. We loved MCA Records. We sort of demanded that they do something before we even started to work on the record. We might have started to work on the record, but before it came out, before they were going to go start working us, we felt it was imperative they see our live show, and not at the Whiskey in LA, where we did just fine. But we wanted them to see us at Trees. So the story is that this was my idea, and I don't know if it was a good or bad idea, but we would always come on stage to an intro song, right? It was usually some dark, brooding hip hop song, or you know. Most recently, in the last 2 years, it's been a song from Rick and Morty. That's a super dreamy trip pop song that we take the stage to, you know. But that night that we flew all the whole staff, I mean the art department, the video department, the, you know, marketing, radio promotion, we flew the whole label out to Dallas, Texas. They watched us play a sold out show at Trees, and our intro song was "Working for MCA." So we thought that was pretty funny. You know, my manager's like, "I don't know if you should do that," but we did it, and they thought it was funny. So yeah man, no, listen, it was great. And listen, I got to tell you, I probably was wooed by MCA also as much because of some of the, you know, I wasn't a huge Leonard Skinner fan, but of course it was an iconic band.
Yeah.
And I still picture those old MCA labels and the old MCA logo. And, I would raid they had these, in the old days, they had these rooms at all the labels where you would take a bag in, literally a trash bag, and just get every CD you wanted.
Oh,
whether
awesome.
it was the latest release, the latest, in that case, Live had just come out on MCA, but also it was like the Tom Petty box set and the Jesus Christ Superstar soundtrack. I'm a fan of that piece of musical work, and it was on MCA Records, so it was cool to be on that label. And honestly, man, I got to tell you, it's a bit sad that they don't exist anymore. I hope someone goes back. I mean, they've been doing that thing where they'll go back and relight the fuse on Elektra Records or whatever. So maybe someday someone will do it. That was a cool label to be on, just historically.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, I have one last question for you, and we're going to let you go for the night. So, as we all know, that the tangible product, album, vinyl, CD, cassette, whatever you want to call it, is not at the forefront of popular culture with young people. And there's record stores that are very few and far now. Do you ever foresee the tangible product, the actual album, the CD, ever becoming popular with young people again, for people who go out there and collect stuff again? Do you ever foresee that actually being a popular culture type of thing again?
Well, I'll just tell you, I mean, sadly, the answer is no. I mean, it won't be it will never be what it was.
Yeah.
But I will say, I do think that young people, and I only know this because I know my kids, they do value holding a record in their hand. I mean, my oldest son, I've got two kids. I mentioned Jude. He's got music out. My oldest son is a published college student at Tufts University studying physics and mathematics, and I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. But it's been kind of fun for me, right? As the Nixons reunited, we reunited in a time where I've got two young sons. They're now 21 and 19, and they just listen. They consume all day long. I mean, they consume music and videos and whatever, all day long on their phones, right? But I will say that Jude and Ben have both come into our little, sort of hangout room, and we have a little vinyl turntable, and they'll just put on a Cage the Elephant album and listen to it. Just listen to it. So I think that vinyl is going to end up being the one last thing that people consume, a physical product. I should also say, just not to plug, but just as a part of the answer to the question, the Nixons have Sonic Boom available on vinyl, and we've sold way more vinyl than we have CD. The Nixons just reissued 6, our first EP, on vinyl, and we did a pressing of it with this great organization in Dallas called DFW Legacy Series. I'm butchering the name, but anyway, there's a great organization. Travis Hill and Jazz Sanders put together this great group down in Dallas, and they reissue old Dallas area bands. And that album is, sold out of its run, so our fans are consuming it. Our fans are digging it. They love that it's out there,
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, it's very cool. I feel lucky to have been, like I said, I feel lucky to have been a part of that whole 90s thing that was just an amazing thing. But I also feel lucky to be here now, and I get on occasionally and check my Spotify streams for the week and the month. I mean, I would have never even imagined what I would be doing. If 90s me was popped in and looked at me right now, they'd be like, what do these numbers mean? What are you doing? But no, it's cool. And again, I do appreciate people like, I Googled while we were talking, because if Travis listens to this, he'll be pissed. But BFW Legacy Series is what it's called, and they're an amazing little group in Dallas. They're actually the presenting sponsor for the Tree Show, along with New Vodka, which I'm excited that they're helping out, because they sent me a big box of vodka. And
nice.
So the groups like that, DFW Legacy Series, that are going back and reissuing old 90s Dallas bands' original albums on vinyl, who would have thought that would be a thing 2 years ago, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, sadly, no. It's streaming. I'm even, I fought it for a while, and now I'm, all of our songs are up streaming. A couple albums that were not available are now available streaming on all platforms, and so we succumb to it. And I think that everyone, sort of will, with a few, vinyl being one exception.
Yeah, very good. Well, we're out of our allotted time. Is there anything that you would like to plug or promote that we left off tonight?
No, man, I appreciate you guys doing this. I'm a podcast fanatic, and I listen to them all the time. And so I appreciate what you guys are doing, shining a little light on some rock and roll music and bands. And appreciate you taking the time and letting me plug some of my upcoming shows. And people should just get on, please, Instagram or Twitter, whatever you do, Facebook, Twitter. The Nixons are all over. All you have to do is just Google the Nixons. And please go follow us and check out our new music. We're really proud of it. And again, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Well, this is how it's going to work. We're about 3 weeks out. When Jeff, the editing wizard, gets this all edited and ready to go, I'll send it to you immediately for stream and download. Thank you so much for your time. You're fantastic.
Awesome.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys as well. Thank you very much.
Take care, man. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Everybody grinds the stone and makes their own mistakes. Hide in the headlights, fight the grip of fear. You can make your dreams come true, but you just can't do